If you're a real estate agent watching this, there's a very good chance that at some point, maybe recently, maybe quietly, you've asked yourself whether the traditional brokerage model still makes sense in today's market. Not because something is broken, not because your brokerage is bad, and not because you're unhappy, but because the business of real estate has evolved. And when industries evolve, the structures inside those industries have to evolve as well. That's just reality. For most agents, the brokerage conversation doesn't come from dissatisfaction. It comes from curiosity. It comes from growth. It comes from asking deeper questions about how the business actually works behind the scenes. So what I want to do in this video is walk you through the eXp Realty model from a purely informational standpoint. No hype, no recruiting pitch, and definitely not a surface level conversation about commission splits. I see so many other explanations on YouTube that are like 8 minutes long or 15 minutes long. They don't explain many of the important details you need to be aware of and many of the things that are going to have a major impact on your business. I'm going to unpack all of them so that you have the right information to make an educated decision as to whether or not eXp is for you. So I'm going to quickly give myself an introduction, then we're going to dive straight into the important information that you're hopefully here for. Before we go any further, it's important that you understand who we are and where we're coming from. We're the Haupt Phaneuf real estate team. My name is Nathan Richter, and my partners are Matthew Haupt and Dane Phaneuf. We're based out of Edmonton, Alberta. Between the three of us, we've worked in the real estate business in many different capacities, not just as agents, but as builders, developers, investors, and business owners. For me personally, I've spent the last 25 years involved in real estate in one form or another: land development, new home construction, large-scale restoration, and investment properties. And long before I ever got licensed, I was buying and selling real estate myself. Because of that, I worked closely with a lot of realtors over the years. I saw different brokerage models up close, different office environments, compensation structures, and approaches to support. When you've been around the business long enough, you start to recognize what works well, what creates friction, and what doesn't hold up over time. So when I decided to get licensed, the timing was intentional. It wasn't just about selling homes. It was about being able to share the experience, knowledge, and network I'd built over decades with clients and eventually with other agents in a way that added real value. I also knew early on what I didn't want. I didn't want a traditional brick and mortar setup. I didn't want desk fees or to be tied to a physical office simply because that's how things had always been done. At the same time, I absolutely wanted collaboration. I wanted to work alongside professionals, exchange ideas, and be aligned with people who were serious about their business. To me, the direction of the industry was clear. The future was cloud-based. So the question was never if, it was who. Alignment mattered to me. I wasn't looking to be sold. I wasn't interested in hype. I was looking for a model that made sense and people who understood real estate and business at a high level. And ultimately, it was that alignment with the model and with the people that led me to eXp and the Haupt Phaneuf real estate team. Now, what I want to focus on here is just the information that actually matters, because most of this doesn't impact you. I only want to make sure that you're spending your time on stuff that actually makes a difference. So the big thing is here, which is that number one, eXp is publicly traded, and number two, the Icon Award. So when it comes to being publicly traded, it's really important to be at a brokerage where you have an opportunity to get ownership. As a real estate agent, if you have a client that's looking to buy or rent, you usually want them to buy. And the reason being not just for your commission's sake, but if they buy a property, they have equity ownership in an asset. And if they rent a property, they pay 100% interest. Well, the same goes with where you hang your real estate license. If you're at a brokerage where you are paying a monthly fee, but you are not getting ownership in, like most franchise brokerages, you're essentially renting your real estate business. Now, if you're at a brokerage that's publicly traded that gives you equity opportunities, well, you have the ability as an agent to get ownership in the business. Again, very important to own versus rent. But where things get really exciting is here in 2015 when we were the first brokerage ever to launch an opportunity to get your entire cap back. So at eXp, we're on an 80-20 split. So when you close the transaction until you cap, 80% goes to the agent, 20% goes to the company. Now, with the $16,000 cap that we have, once you cap, you go to 100% commission. Based on an 80-20 split, you need to do $80,000 in commission until you cap. 20% of 80,000 is 16,000. That's the cap, 16,000. So when you cap and you hit your 80,000 GCI or 16,000 that goes to the company, you start making 100% of your commission. What the Icon Award is if you do 20 deals after you cap, you become an Icon agent and you can get your entire $16,000 cap back for free in company stock. The exciting thing is there are many people who ended up getting their $16,000 back years ago in company stock that's gone on to become multiple 6 or 7 figures, which would have been zero at any other brokerage. So again, the moral of the story, as we start to go through this with eXp being a cloud-based brokerage, when you drop overhead, reduce expenses by going cloud-based, you could afford to give more back to agents for doing the same thing they would have done any other place. And so when you look at this at traditional brokerages, when you close deals, you get commission. At eXp, when you close deals, you can get commission and equity ownership. At traditional brokerages, you pay a monthly fee, and that goes away. At eXp, you pay a monthly fee, but you get ownership. And so we will walk through many more aspects of this as we continue. So you can see here, explosive growth with eXp. It's been the fastest growing independent brokerage. It's now got upwards of 90,000 agents and is in 24 countries worldwide. That includes Canada and the US. Now, this is really important because we're an independent brokerage. When you look at a traditional franchise brokerage, let's say you're at a local office, if you want to promote a property, you can promote that property within the confines of your brokerage, which might be 50 to 100 to maybe 200 people. When you look at eXp with real estate investors from different countries, overseas, different languages, if you promote a property, it's getting in front of 90,000 agents across 24 different countries. So it becomes a really great opportunity to get more exposure and potentially more referrals for your business. Now let's dispel a couple of common myths because we hear them all the time. One of the biggest ones is this idea that agents at eXp don't sell real estate, that they're only focused on recruiting. So rather than opinions, let's look at publicly reported data. According to the 2025 Real Trends Verified Brokerage Rankings, which are based on 2024 closed transaction data, eXp Realty ranked number 1 in the United States for transaction size. That means more completed transactions than any other brokerage included in the report. In the same Real Trends Verified rankings, eXp also ranked 3rd nationally by total sales volume, placing it among the top producing brokerages in the country. These rankings are independently compiled, publicly reported, and widely referenced across the real estate industry. So regardless of how someone feels about the model, the production data is clear. There are a lot of serious full-time agents at eXp actively selling a lot of homes, which means the idea that agents at eXp just recruit simply doesn't align with what the numbers actually show. And it's not just about overall brokerage rankings. What often gets missed in these conversations is the depth of production inside eXp. There are hundreds of agents within the company producing at a very high level, not just a small group at the top, but a deep bench of experienced full-time professionals. That kind of production density doesn't happen by accident. It's one of the reasons eXp has seen a number of very prominent teams make the move over from other brokerages over the last few years. When established teams, people who already have leverage, systems, and options, decide to change platforms, it's rarely impulsive. It's usually because the model supports growth, collaboration, and scalability in a way that aligns with where they want to take their business next. And that's why eXp has become a place where agents don't just join, they build momentum, and in many cases, significantly accelerate what they're already doing. Now again, if you have any questions as we go through this presentation, just drop a comment and I'll make sure to respond to any of them for you. So this is going to be important before we get into the additional income streams of eXp because there's 3 of them. You have a commission helping people buy and sell and invest. You have equity ownership, which is the stock. And then you had the revenue share or the residual component. But before getting into this, I always like to unpack why agents actually even get into real estate. Well, let's unpack that. How do you create wealth? Well, you need 4 things. Hence the wealth quadrant, duplication, equity ownership, passive or residual income, and multiple streams of income. Well, the traditional way of creating wealth as an agent is to trade your time for money, make as much commission as possible, and save it. And then hopefully after a few years, you've saved up enough to invest into real estate or stocks or whatever, but we'll say real estate. But when you invest in real estate, you have duplication of doors, equity ownership in properties, passive or residual income, and multiple streams of income. But the difficult part is that if you want to increase your residual or passive income, you have to trade more money for more time and do it again. Or rather, more time for more money and do it all again. When you look at eXp, because of the multiple income streams and the nature of them, we actually have all 4 components of the wealth quadrant. So you create wealth just by the nature of being an agent here. Now, also, when we look at a flexible lifestyle, creating a flexible lifestyle requires 2 things: money freedom and time freedom. You can create money freedom at any brokerage in the world if you work hard enough, but you can't create time freedom easily. And the reason is that if you have one income stream that requires your time invested in creating it being commissioned, if you don't invest your time, you have no income and thus no flexible lifestyle. When you look at eXp with the residual component, well, we have both components. One of the things that really stands out to us inside eXp is the flexibility the model can create over time. We've seen this firsthand through people we know within the organization, experienced agents who earlier in their careers only had one income stream, buyers and sellers. And when that's the case, stepping away from your business often means stepping away from your income. They've shared stories of going on trips, international travel, family vacations, and being glued to their phone the entire time. Emails, texts, deal issues, constantly checking in, not really being present, and if deals didn't close, there was no income coming in. What's different is that once additional income streams are layered in, alongside production, that pressure starts to ease. We've seen agents take time away, actually disconnect, and still have income coming in while they're gone. And the real benefit isn't just financial, it's personal. It's being able to go on a holiday and not feel like you're choosing between your business and your family. It's being present with your spouse, your kids, or just taking a break without constantly checking your phone. So the question becomes, can you imagine being able to step away from your business for a period of time without everything stopping? That's the opportunity this model creates for agents who choose to build it intentionally. So let's unpack the equity opportunities at eXp, because this is one of the more unique parts of the model. Through eXp equity award programs, agents can earn company stock by hitting certain milestones throughout the year. For example, there is an equity award tied to your first completed transaction, another when you reach your annual cap, and additional equity opportunities when you sponsor an agent who closes their first transaction. The important thing to understand is that the structure of these programs is consistent, but the exact amounts and currency can vary by country, depending on local regulations and market structure. Now, we talked about the Icon Award, but there's 2 different ways that you could actually hit it. Most don't know this. So the first way, just to reiterate it, which we talked about earlier, is that we have an 80-20 split with a $16,000 cap. When you cap, you go to 100% commission. If you do 20 deals after you cap, you become an Icon agent and get your $16,000 cap back in company stock. The alternative way to hit it is if you're in a higher price point market such as Vancouver or Miami, or if you're a luxury agent where the GCI is much higher. If you do $500,000 in GCI with a minimum of 10 transactions, you will also become an Icon agent and get your cap back for free in company stock. Now, there's an additional option here. It's the only one that's optional. You can opt in, opt out at any given time with one signature. Agents have the option to participate in an equity purchase program where a portion of commissions can be used to acquire company stock, often at a preferred price. So regardless of where you're operating, the concept is the same. As you produce, contribute, and grow within the company, you have opportunities to build ownership, not just income. Now let's talk about the revenue share or residual component of eXp. This is by far the most powerful and the most misunderstood part of the model. So I want to make sure you have real clarity by the end of this. At a high level, eXp retains a portion of the company dollar and redistributes it back to agents who help the company grow. That's what revenue share is. It's not coming out of another agent's commission, and it's not something agents are paying into. It's paid by the brokerage from the revenue it earns on real transactions. This is also where one of the biggest myths shows up, the idea that eXp is some kind of pyramid. So let's address that head on. If you look at how most traditional brick and mortar franchise brokerages are structured, they already operate in a tiered ownership model. You've got ownership at the top, then international franchisors, regional owners, local broker owners, and finally the agents at the bottom. Multiple layers of ownership all participating in the revenue generated by agent production. The key difference is this. In those traditional models, the revenue flows up to ownership. At eXp, the structure is fundamentally different. There are no franchise owners, there are no regional operators, there's no middle layer sitting between the agents and the company. It's an independent brokerage made up of ownership and agents. That's it. And importantly, agents themselves are one of the largest ownership groups in the company. This isn't a venture capital driven model where decisions are made for a balance sheet. It's an agent owned, agent grown company where the people doing the business have real alignment with how the company operates. That ownership structure is exactly what makes the revenue share model possible. So when a transaction closes, 80% goes to the agent and 20% goes to eXp as the company dollar. And here's the critical part. Out of that company dollar, approximately half is intentionally set aside and redistributed back to agents through revenue share and equity programs, not to franchise owners, not to regional license holders, but back to agents who help the company grow by introducing productive agents. And this isn't theoretical. In recent years, eXp has paid hundreds of millions of dollars back to agents through revenue share and equity programs. Most recently, eXp publicly reported paying over $220 million in a single year back to agents for helping the company grow. At a traditional franchise brokerage, that same money would have flowed to international owners, regional owners, and broker owners, not to the agents, even though the agents are the ones actually doing the deals. That's the fundamental distinction. Revenue share at eXp is only generated when real transactions close. No production means no revenue share. There are no participation fees and there's no compensation without actual business being done. So when people hear the word revenue share and jump to conclusions, it usually comes from not understanding where the money comes from or how it's paid. At its core, this model is about alignment. Agents who contribute to the growth of the company are rewarded when that growth produces real revenue, not because of hype, not because of recruitment alone, but because transactions are happening. And that's what makes this component of the model so powerful when it's understood properly. Now, before we go any deeper into how revenue share actually works, I want to pause and address the most common concern we hear. And it usually sounds like this: I don't want to recruit, I just want to sell homes. That's completely fair. And for most agents, that's exactly how they should be thinking. We get into real estate as we all want to sell a lot of properties. But here's the important distinction. Agents already influence where other agents go. It happens naturally. People ask you questions. New agents ask where you'd start. Experienced agents ask where you'd go if you were making a change. Agents relocating ask who you trust. Those conversations are already happening. In traditional brokerage models, that influence creates value for the organization, but the economic benefit of that value flows upward. The brokerage, the owners, the franchise system benefit, but the agent who made the recommendation doesn't. At eXp, the difference is alignment. If you introduce someone to a better environment and they come in and produce, the model has a mechanism to recognize the value that was created, not because you recruited, but because real business is being done. You're not being asked to convince anyone. You're not being asked to build a team. You're not being asked to stop selling homes. You're simply being recognized for something agents already do, sharing insight and making recommendations they believe in. And with that context in mind, now we can walk through how the revenue share program actually works. Now let's talk about some of the major changes that were made to the revenue share model. As you can see here, eXp operates on a 7-tier revenue share structure. Historically, there was a concept called a frontline qualifying agent, or FLQA. A frontline agent is someone you personally sponsor. A frontline qualifying agent meant that person had closed at least one transaction within a rolling 6-month period. Under the previous structure, you could have an unlimited number of agents on your first tier, and you would still earn revenue share from them. But if you wanted to unlock full compensation on the deeper tiers, you had to meet certain FLQA requirements. For example, to fully open tier 2, you needed 5 frontline qualifying agents. To fully open tier 3, you needed 10, and so on as you move deeper. What happened in practice was this. Agents were bringing people into the company. Those people were joining in good faith, but because of market conditions or timing, they weren't always closing fast enough to qualify, which meant sponsors weren't receiving the full revenue share they otherwise could have. That structure exists in various forms across other cloud-based brokerages as well. eXp made a decision to change that. Recognizing that the market has been challenging for many agents, eXp removed those upfront barriers and opened the first 3 tiers at full compensation from day one without requiring frontline qualifying agents to unlock them. That change alone resulted in a meaningful increase in revenue share for a very large number of agents, effectively overnight, without them having to do anything differently. It was a significant shift in the model. Around the same time, eXp also introduced revenue share pay now. Previously, like most brokerages, revenue share was paid on a monthly cycle. Now agents have the ability to request their earned revenue share on demand, subject to normal banking processing times. The key point is flexibility. You're no longer required to wait for a fixed payout date if you've already earned the income. Another important distinction relates to production requirements. At many other cloud-based brokerages, agents are required to remain actively producing in order to continue receiving residual income. At eXp, revenue share is not tied to your personal production. If the agents in your organization are producing, revenue share continues to be paid, regardless of whether you are actively selling at that moment. That distinction becomes especially relevant when people think long-term. Now let's walk through a simple example so the math is clear. Let's say John is an agent you personally sponsored, and John closes a transaction with a $10,000 commission. The standard split applies. 80% goes to John, $8,000. 20% goes to eXp, $2,000. From that company dollar, eXp allocates approximately 50% to the company and 50% to revenue share and equity programs. So in this example, $1,000 stays with eXp, $1,000 goes into the revenue share pool. From that $1,000, 17.5% is allocated to Tier 1, which equals $175. That $175 represents the minimum guaranteed amount paid on that transaction at Tier 1. Now, if you've seen older revenue share charts, you may remember higher maximum numbers displayed. That doesn't mean revenue share was cut. Previously, payouts were capped by a ceiling and adjusted downward using what's called the SRS buffer, which ensured the company didn't pay out more than 50% of the company dollar. That system made payouts harder to predict. Under the updated model, eXp shifted from a ceiling to a floor. In simple terms, instead of expecting one number and potentially receiving less at month end, agents now receive at least the floor and often receive an additional bonus payout at the end of the month when the final revenue share pool is balanced. For most agents, especially with the first 3 tiers now fully open, this has resulted in more predictable income and in many cases higher total payouts than before. Now let's look at a Tier 2 example. John sponsors Sarah. Sarah closes a $10,000 commission. The same 80-20 split applies. The same 50-50 company allocation applies. And from the revenue share pool, Tier 2 receives its designated percentage. With the updated structure, Tier 2 also has a defined floor and any excess is paid out as part of the month-end bonus distribution. There's also a new Tier 1 bonus component for frontline agents in their first year. This allows a sponsor to earn a meaningful additional bonus when a first-year frontline agent caps, a benefit that did not exist in this form previously. So when you step back and look at the full picture, the first 3 tiers are fully open from day one. Payouts are more transparent and predictable. Many agents are earning more than under the prior structure, and sponsors can earn additional first-year bonuses on frontline agents. Before we move into broker support and a walkthrough of the platform itself, there are 2 additional revenue share nuances that are important to understand, and once most people see these clearly, it's usually when the model really clicks. So the first thing I want to touch on is that revenue share is actually a willable asset. And when you really stop and think about that, it changes how you look at this business. Most people work extremely hard in real estate to provide for their family. That's the driving force for almost everyone. At a traditional brokerage, if something were to happen to me tomorrow, I'd leave my family with whatever I've accumulated up to that point. And I think it's worth pausing for a moment and asking yourself an honest question. If something unexpected happened to you tomorrow, do you have enough saved today to provide for your family for the rest of their lives? For most people, the honest answer is no. With eXp, the revenue share you build is willable. If I were to pass away, someone in my family could obtain a real estate license within a 12-month period and retain that residual income. That means the income stream I helped build doesn't disappear. It continues to support my family, potentially at a very meaningful level, year after year, as long as that license is maintained. That creates something most brokerages simply don't offer, a real layer of protection and long-term security for the people you're doing this for. The second piece of this is that revenue share can function as a retirement plan or exit strategy. As long as you maintain an active real estate license, you retain your residual income. So let's look at a simple example. Let's say you're 40 years old and you plan to actively sell real estate until you're 50. At a traditional brokerage, that usually means 10 years of hard work, time away from family, friends, and the things you enjoy. And when you stop closing deals, your income stops. One stream of income tied entirely to production. At eXp, that same 10 years can look very different. Let's say you stop selling at 50, but you're healthy enough to maintain an active license until 75. You're not doing deals, you're not chasing transactions, you're simply maintaining your license in good standing. From 50 to 75, you can continue receiving your monthly residual revenue share. That income can support your lifestyle, allow you to spend time with your kids and grandkids, travel, or focus on whatever matters most to you. So instead of 10 years of income, you've effectively created 35 years of income simply by being aligned with a brokerage that compensates agents beyond just transactions. And that's a fundamentally different way to look at your career. One important structural update that's worth mentioning here is the introduction of co-sponsorship. In the past, agents often felt like they had to choose between relationships, maybe a local connection or someone they already knew, and aligning with a group that offered more structure, guidance, or support. Co-sponsorship removes a lot of that friction. It gives agents more flexibility in how they align, allowing them to maintain relationships while also accessing additional resources that can help them build momentum faster. We'll walk through how that works in more detail if it's relevant to your situation. The key point here is simply this: alignment is more flexible than it used to be, and choosing the right alignment matters. Now, before we go any further, I want to zoom out and talk about what eXp actually provides agents on a day-to-day basis, because this is where a lot of misconceptions still exist. One of the biggest advantages of eXp is the support structure. At a traditional brokerage, you typically have one broker wearing every hat: compliance, training, onboarding, recruiting, marketing, transaction review, everything. And that's not a knock on brokers. It's just the reality of the model. One person can only do so much, which is why support often feels slow or inconsistent. At eXp, support is built very differently. There are thousands of salaried employees across the organization, each specializing in a specific area of the business: transaction support, accounting, compliance, technology, teams, onboarding, and broker support. You're not relying on one person for everything. You're accessing specialists who do one thing all day, every day. That's why support at eXp is both faster and more consistent. And because eXp operates globally, that support is available well beyond the hours of a traditional brick and mortar office. On the technology side, agents receive access to a full ecosystem of tools designed to help them actually run their business. That includes eXp CRM, powered by KV Core by Inside Real Estate, which is widely regarded as one of the leading real estate CRMs in the industry. Outside of eXp, platforms with comparable functionality often cost thousands of dollars per year, depending on how they're configured and used. Transaction management is handled through SkySlope, and agents also have optional access to platforms like Lofty, formerly Chime, if that better fits how they operate. There are also built-in lead generation and marketing tools, including automated Google pay-per-click solutions, marketing centers with pre-built assets, and branding resources that agents can customize for their market. Training is another major differentiator. Instead of relying on one or two people within a local office, eXp offers dozens of live training sessions every week taught by top producing agents from across the company. These are agents actively selling in today's market, sharing what's actually working: listings, buyers, role play, lead generation systems, and certifications. And because everything is centralized, agents can access training that's specific to their state, province, or country, as well as broader production-focused sessions across the company. Communication and collaboration also happen inside one connected ecosystem. Agents can communicate directly with brokers, support staff, leadership, and other agents through internal platforms, whether that's for transaction questions, referrals, or collaboration across markets. Instead of being limited to a local office of 50 or 100 agents, you're connected to tens of thousands of agents across multiple countries. That scale matters, especially when it comes to referrals, exposure for listings, and collaboration. eXp also provides several specialized divisions for agents who want to focus, differentiate, or scale into specific niches. One of the most established is the luxury division, which offers elevated marketing assets, global exposure, and advanced training designed for agents working in higher-end markets or looking to break into that space. There's also a full certification path and ongoing education led by agents who are actively producing in luxury today. Another growing area is sports and entertainment, which supports agents working with professional athletes, entertainers, and high-profile clients. For agents who have always been interested in that world or already have proximity to it, this division provides structure, compliance guidance, and specialized resources. There's also a land and ranch division, which has become a strong option for agents who want to move away from high-volume residential work and into more specialized, often higher margin transactions. Many agents have found that focusing on a niche like land or ranch allows them to reduce deal count while increasing income and lowering stress. The broader point is this: eXp makes it easier to specialize. Whether you already have a niche or you're still figuring out what that looks like, the platform supports agents who want to build a clear value proposition rather than trying to be everything to everyone. When you step back and look at it as a whole, the support structure, the technology, the training, the collaboration, and the scale, it becomes clear why eXp operates the way it does. Everything is designed to remove friction, increase leverage, and give agents access to resources that would be very difficult to replicate inside a traditional brokerage. And because transparency matters, I want to briefly touch on costs at a high level before we talk about alignment. One of the reasons eXp resonates with a lot of agents is that the cost structure is very straightforward and predictable. There's a modest startup fee when you join, which covers your initial setup and access to the systems and platforms we've talked about. After that, there's a flat monthly brokerage fee. On each transaction, you're on an 80-20 split with a cap. Once you hit that cap, you move to 100% commission with a small per transaction fee. For agents who qualify for Icon, that transaction fee is reduced even further. There are also standard transaction reviews and insurance-related fees, but in many cases, those are only paid when you're actually getting paid. The important point isn't the exact dollar amount, because that can vary slightly by country and region. It's that the structure is simple, transparent, and easy to understand. eXp itself is a platform, a very powerful one, but how effective that platform becomes for you depends heavily on who you align with when you join. And this is where a lot of agents struggle. Because eXp is virtual and decentralized, some agents join, log in, and then feel like they're on an island. They see the tools, they see the opportunity, but they don't always know where to start, what to focus on first, or how to build momentum quickly. That's where alignment changes the experience. When agents come into eXp through us, they're not just getting access to the brokerage, they're stepping into a structured environment designed to remove friction in the first 30, 60, and 90 days. Through our alignment with one of the top producing organizations inside eXp, agents are enrolled into a fast-track environment focused on clarity, execution, and early momentum. That starts with onboarding. Instead of being overwhelmed by dozens of tools at once, agents are guided through a clear, practical onboarding process: what to set up first, what to ignore for now, and what actually moves the needle early on. There's also applied training around the core tools eXp provides, particularly the CRM. Most agents don't struggle because they lack technology. They struggle because they don't know how to use it effectively. Through alignment, agents get hands-on guidance around lead generation, follow-up systems, database nurturing, and conversion, not theory, but real-world application. Beyond that, there's ongoing support through structured calls, group sessions, and collaborative environments focused on building predictable lead flow, converting buyers and listings, content and modern marketing strategies, systems for follow-up and scalability, and building a business that's sustainable long-term. This isn't about shortcuts. It's about removing guesswork. Agents learn from people who are actively producing, operating businesses, and navigating today's market. Not just teaching concepts, but sharing what actually works right now. Just as importantly, there's community. One of the biggest differences agents notice is that they're no longer building in isolation. They're surrounded by other agents at different stages, newer agents, experienced agents, and high-level producers, all sharing insights, challenges, and wins in real time. That kind of environment creates momentum, and it's intentional. Now, it's also important to be clear about this. eXp is not for everyone. Some agents genuinely prefer a traditional office environment. They like having a physical space, seeing people face to face every day, and operating inside a more conventional brokerage structure. And for a lot of people that works well, there's nothing wrong with that. eXp is simply a different model. For agents who want to improve their earning potential, work in a highly collaborative environment, and have the ability to scale their business beyond just transactions, while still doing what they love, which is selling real estate, eXp is absolutely worth a closer look. And here's the most important takeaway. You don't just join eXp, you join through people. That decision matters more than most agents realize. If you're interested in getting more information, the next step is a conversation. We can book a Zoom call, phone call, or in-person meeting where we walk through where you are today, how your current brokerage actually works, what you're paying, what you're getting, and how eXp compares. If you've watched this entire video, it's because you're already thinking differently about your business. That's exactly the point where a conversation makes sense. If you want clarity, not theory, not opinions, use the link in the description to book a private call or reach out using the contact information below. You can also drop questions in the comments. We do read them. Thanks for taking the time to watch. We look forward to connecting.